Welcome to Dark Winter Nights, broadcasting live on KUAC from Herring Auditorium in Fairbanks, Alaska. My name is Rob Prince. I'm chair of the journalism department at UAF and your host for an incredible night of true stories from Alaska. Tonight we have 10 storytellers for you, including Chris Zwolinksi, Dr. D, Sophie Henry, Heather Penn, Harper O'Brien, Brent Sass, Dick Griffith, Kat Betters, Andy Connor, and Marty Rainey. In fact, one of you will be telling a story for us tonight. Here's how it works. Fill out the form on the back of your program. Turn it in during intermission. You can turn it in at the merchandise desk, or you can turn it in to anyone with a Dark Winter Nights t-shirt, and we'll pick a name in the second half of the show. Here are the rules if you haven't been to one of our events before. Number one, you have to put your own name down. I don't want to call the name and have them be like, no! That's going to happen someday. The story has to have happened in Alaska. It has to have happened to you. It has to be a story and not a speech. I know everyone else is wrong and you're right, and I'm really sorry about that, but we don't want to hear about it tonight. We're on KUAC now, so you can't have any naughty language. So you might just have to censor that story about the outhouse or something. And it has to be 10 minutes or less. So fill out that form, turn it in at intermission, and you could be one of tonight's storytellers. You can also use that form just to tell us if you have a story you'd like to share on our radio program or our podcast, not necessarily live on stage. But I wouldn't turn that form in before the show's over. Otherwise, we might mistake you for someone who wants to tell a story and pull your name in the second half. So just hang on to that till after the show's over if you just want to let us know you have a story. We're also going to be reading your favorite Black Friday memories on stage. So we've got some people who have been going around collecting those. If you've got a memory from Black Friday that you would like to share, we've got little sheets. Please fill those out. Those of you listening at home on KUAC, and also those of you here with iPhones, whatever, you can also submit your memory through our social media. So if you have a great memory from Black Friday that you would like to send to us and save a tree, I guess you can go to facebook.com/darkwinternights and paste your memory there. Or you can also go to Twitter and post with hashtag DWN. And we'll be looking for those too. Our band tonight is Thought Trade with Emily Anderson. I'd like to thank my employer, the University of Alaska Fairbanks College of Liberal Arts Journalism Department, as well as Geek City Electronics, Alaska Universal Productions, Forethought Carpentry, LLC, and Pike's Waterfront Lodge for their support of this event. Our storytellers tonight all have time limits. If they go over their time limits, I will get up and put a hand on their shoulder. And that's about it. I don't really have a plan B, so let's hope that that works. Our first storyteller tonight came to Alaska to take advantage of everything this great state had to offer. Unfortunately, it had a little bit more to offer than he and his friends were ready for. Please welcome Chris Zwolinski with a story we call How to Use a Life Jacket.
There were three of us, Mark and Eldon, who are brothers, and myself. Not one of us had any whitewater rafting experience. I mean, it's something we wanted to do. We watched it on TV. We'd seen the magazines, but it didn't involve us. We just wanted to do it. It was 1985. I hadn't lived up here very long, but just being in Alaska was a thrill for me. It still is. But I'd get out hiking and bicycling whenever I could. But the only rafting that we did was floating on the Chena River through town, and the only white water we'd see is if a power boat went too fast next to us. So we had one of those blue and yellow vinyl rafts that we bought at Pay and Save, and we'd blow it up, and we'd put it in at Alaska Land, Pikes Land, Pioneer Park, and float past all the houses and nice trim lawns and end up at Pikes Landing. That was the extent of our river experience. Until one day, Eldon bought a new raft at a garage sale. It was about 10 feet long, yellow. It was rubberized canvas, and it was a six-man raft. It said right on it in block letters, six-man raft. And it had like a clothesline around the outside of it attached, and for carrying it or towing it, I don't know. We weren't rafters. So Mark and Eldon had been down at Chittenden fishing, and it had been raining a lot, and on their way home, where the Delta River parallels the highway, they were paying close attention to it, and they thought, God, that looks neat, that looks great. So when they arrived back in Fairbanks, they informed me that we were going whitewater rafting on the Delta River, to which I replied, that's great, let's go, I'm in. Where's the Delta? So I'm not so sure why that new raft gave us any new rafting capabilities, but nonetheless, we threw the raft and our gear into the truck and we drove south. It's about 3 hours to the first point where we can see the Delta good, and this is where the Black Rapids River pours into the Delta. There's a big pull off there. We got out of the truck and they present this to me, and I'm kind of looking at it and go, whoa, it's just boiling, and my enthusiasm is waning a little bit, and I'm getting a little bit skeptical. I'm like, do you think we can do this? And they said, no, this is where we're going to take out. But even looking upriver, I'm looking at it and I'm going, are you sure? And I distinctly remember the comment back to me was, oh, it'll be fine. I mean, if anything goes wrong, we'll just paddle to shore, hike to the road, and hitch a ride back to the truck. And I go, oh, okay, that's an escape route. So we jumped back in the truck and drove about 20 miles upriver on the highway. At this point, we get out of the truck, and I did a little research since then, and I've learned that the point where we got into the river is where the book says that inexperienced rafters, that would be us, this is where they generally get out after rafting the upper stretch, which is more placid. So we put into the river, and we put on our life jackets, life preservers, and we take with us some extra clothes and a not-so-waterproof bag, kind of, and some snacks. That's it. And we get into the water, and at this point the river is pretty braided. So we find ourselves walking a little bit, towing the raft, then jumping back in, and then rafting for a while, then getting out, towing it. And this goes on for about an hour, but it's okay. It's a gorgeous sunny day. It's beautiful, blue sky in the middle of the mountains. I mean, this is fantastic. We're enjoying it. Do it for about an hour until the river channels up, and we find ourselves going down the river. And again, it's beautiful. It's getting a little faster. The water's getting a little bit gray. There's a lot of glacial creeks coming in, and it's from the creeks from the glaciers, and it's getting a little faster, a little colder. Okay, I don't know who did it first, but one of us took off their life preserver and put it underneath their knees to insulate against that cold floor. And the rest of us thought, the other two of us thought, well, that's a good idea. It's much more comfortable. So, and besides, we're going to put the life preservers back on when we need them. I mean, that only makes sense. So, again, it's a gorgeous day. We're in the mountains. We're just loving it, just digging it. We're going down the river. And another hour, this or so, and we see our first standing wave, and this is going to be exciting. And we paddle up toward it. We're aiming right on it. We line up, and we hit that wave straight on, and we just float right over the top. It was so anticlimactic. But not to worry, there was another one off to the left. So we paddle over to the one on the left, and we hit that one straight on as well, and we just kind of float over it. It was like, it got to be like a pinball where we go to the left and paddle to the right and over to the left. And we were enjoying it. And with each wave, some were a little stronger than others, but the raft was taking it well, and we thought we're gaining experience. We're definitely getting more confident at this. And this goes on for about an hour. Well, the river eventually starts tightening up and channeling up, and we're not having to go to the left and the right so much anymore. And the river's pretty much taking us where it wants to take us, right down the center, and we're going roller after roller, and the water's splashing, and we're getting our money's worth here. This is good. So we hit a series of waves, and a little more than what we bargained for. There was a hole at the end of it. The raft went in, and it flipped end for end, upside down, tossed us out. We're out of the water. When I came up, I was underneath the raft. I went back down, came back up, and I grabbed a hold of the outside of the rope as the string, the clothesline, as Eldon and Mark were. I suppose if we had any experience, the hydraulic was kind of keeping us in place. And if we had any experience, maybe we could have held the raft, flipped it, and climbed back in. But we have no experience. Our instinct said, get out of there. This is dangerous. So we pushed off and immediately got sucked down under the next wave. So we're holding on. We get back up, and we come out of the water, and we're spitting and coughing. And what we learned to do was scout ahead, look ahead, and when we saw waves coming, we would take a breath of air before the hydraulic would suck us down, which it did every single time. So this got to be a sequence after sequence, just seeing the water getting sucked underneath and coughing, spitting, and popping back up. This went on for, I'm guessing, a couple of minutes. Then the water flattened out. It's still moving fast, but we see a gravel bar off to the right. And we start stroking and kicking with everything we had to the gravel bar, hoping that we could make it. And we did. We touched ground. I have my feet firmly in the gravel. Mark's got his feet in the gravel. Eldon's feet are tangled up in the rope with the bow line. I didn't even know the raft. I didn't know it had a bow. But his legs are wrapped in. He has no control. He can't get his legs into the gravel. I'm holding on. Mark's holding on. We're pulling with everything we have. I was almost up to my waist out of the water. I guess, I mean, it's hindsight, but I guess I could have let go. And you know, the thought never occurred to me. It never occurred to just get out of the water. I held on, and the raft and Eldon sucked Mark and I back in, and we were back in the channel, back into the routine, which we knew well, which was get a breath of air, get sucked underneath, and get ready for the next wave. Now, a couple more waves, and I realized I've still got a paddle in my hand. I didn't even realize it. Mark's got a paddle in his hand. Eldon doesn't, but we've got paddles. We didn't even know it. And as soon as I realized, I even thought about the fact that I'm holding a paddle, we had another particularly violent wave, and it pulled us down hard. It ripped the paddle out of my hand. When I came back up, Mark wasn't there. And I looked at Eldon, and he's looking for his brother, and he's not there. And we didn't know what to think. We looked at each other for a while, and we didn't know what to say. We hit another hydraulic, and it sucked us down again. We came back up, and we heard a voice, and it was Mark. And he'd worked himself to the other side of the raft. What we didn't realize was he had a plan. What he did was he had taken his paddle and he flipped it over the upside-down raft, and he yelled at his brother to grab a hold of it. We're getting pretty numb. We don't have a whole lot of grip. Eldon tried to hold on to it. It took a couple of attempts, but he did. He managed to hold on to it for a while, and Mark used the paddle to pull himself up on top of the upside-down raft. And then he hauled his brother up, and then they hauled me on top. So we're pretty excited. We're not exactly high-fiving here. We're not, but we think we're going to make it. So we're paddling, trying to make it to shore. The current shoved us over to the right to a cut bank where it's rocky, and we bounced off and back into the channel, and then we realized that we're sinking. And what had happened was one of the rocks on that cut bank had sliced a hole into the raft. And this is another thing we're kind of learning as we go. I didn't know that the raft had two chambers, a left and a right. I don't know which one we were left with, but now the three of us are riding a sausage. And so we've got we're on this thing, we're riding this thing. I happen to be in the front, and we can see the Black Rapids River up ahead of us. And we don't think we're going to make it for what it entails after the junction of the two rivers. So we're paddling, we're trying to hold on to the sausage and trying to paddle with everything we have. Mark had given me the paddle since I was in front, hoping to steer it better. And when I see we don't know if we're going to make it, I yell at him to hold on to me. I'm going to let go and just use both hands. He told me later that with every stroke that I did, the front of the sausage would come up in the air and go back down and come up in the air and bounce back down again. And there was an eddy we were trying to hit, and we were pulling with everything we had, and we didn't make it. And then it was like the countdown, 150 feet, 100 feet, 75 feet. And I'd say it was about 15 feet before the rivers joined. My paddle hit gravel, hit rock, and I jumped out, grabbed a rock, had the front of the sausage. It pivoted around. Mark jumped out and was able to grab his brother, and we dragged ourselves up on shore, which was pretty relieving, except for the fact that we're on the wrong shore. We're on the shore opposite side of the highway. Now, so we're right across now from that pull-off that I told you about, that where we first inspected the rivers. And at that pull-off is a young couple, and so in my imagination, this is just my imagination, some guy's got his heartthrob out for a Sunday drive, and they pull off the road, look at the river and the glacier, Black Rapids Glacier and the mountains, and they kind of looked up river like, whoa, what's that? And which is sausage coming down, which is us, and they've probably never seen anybody rafting that way, and hopefully don't ever again. And so they watched us drag up onto the shore, and they were trying to yell to us back and forth, and the idea is if we're okay. But they went up about a mile or 2 miles up is what was at the time known as the Black Rapids Mountain Training Center, military. And they went up there to try to get help. He came back within 10 minutes and somehow communicated that we couldn't hear over the roar of the water. Somehow communicated that help was, we couldn't hear. Hours is all we heard. And it was hours. It was about 3 hours before anybody arrived. And 3 soldiers did arrive, and they were attempting to rescue us. So what they had with them was a raft about half the size of ours and a fishing rod. Now, they're trying to communicate with us, and we're kind of, it's like 2 minds across the river with each other trying to communicate and get an idea of what's going to happen. But eventually the idea that they gave us, that they were trying to get across to us, was they were going to cast the fishing rod a lead weight across, and we would hold on to the line and pull a rope across. And once the rope was across both sides of the river, they would ferry the raft back and forth and get us back on their side of the river. And but when we got a hold of the fishing line and they attached it to the rope, it would, as soon as that rope hit the current, it would snap the fishing line, and so it wasn't working. We made 3 attempts, but it didn't work. So they left, and we honestly didn't know what was going to happen at that point. But the guys had a lighter, and they had taken it apart and dried it in the sun, and we had gotten a fire going by this time. I mean, hours had passed. But so we were warm, we were on land, and we were, as far as we were concerned, we were fine. Something was going to happen, and which something did happen. About 2 o'clock in the morning, it's the middle of summertime, so it's daylight, we hear a helicopter. It's a state trooper helicopter, and it comes and lands right next to us. And it's a big machine. I'm guessing, don't know much about helicopters. It was an 8-person helicopter. It lands, the co-pilot jumps out, and he ushers us in without saying anything. He ushers us inside. We grab what's left of our raft, toss it in, and it takes off and starts heading north. And the 3 of us are kind of looking at each other like, truck's back there. And but nobody's saying anything. So I leaned up to the co-pilot, and it's hard to hear. We don't have headsets, they do. And I was yelling at not yelling at, but toward the co-pilot that we've got a truck back there, and I didn't see it, but I'm sure he rolled his eyes, and I could see him talking to the pilot to the left seat, and that this huge machine just kind of arced around, swung around to the south, and flew us right back to the truck and landed right next to it. It's like valet service. And we jumped out of the truck and out of the helicopter, and it's then when the trooper took some information from us, and we got our names in the paper. And it's not exactly, I didn't even like getting my name in the paper if I scolded a goal in B-League hockey, but now I got my name for this. But so it was a pretty quiet ride back to Fairbanks. We weren't saying a whole lot, pretty dog-faced, and but I do remember thinking as we were driving along, I was thinking, I'm alive! This is great. I'm an idiot, but I'm alive. So we got to Fairbanks, I don't know, 7 o'clock in the morning. And about 3 days later, I'm feeling bad about the whole thing. We all are, how stupid we are. But about 3 days later, I went out and I bought 3 brand new life preservers, one for each of us. And I went over to the house, and I gave Mark his, and he said, "Oh, thanks, Chris, that was really nice. Oh, that's pretty cool, thank you." And I gave Eldon his, and immediately he tossed it on the floor, dropped to his knees, bounced up and down on it, and said, "It fits! This is great! God, thanks, Chris. This is awesome!" And I'm sure you're thinking that the raft never saw water again, but it did. The very next summer, I patched a hole in it, and I pumped it up. And my parents had given me some baby ducks. I filled the raft up full of water and used it as a duck pond. Thank you.
Chris Zwolinksi. I wanted to call that story Death by Sausage, but Chris did not approve of that. All right, here's some of your Black Friday memories. Bought my first adult item, a mattress. Cool. Spending time with my family after Thanksgiving. That would be the day after Thanksgiving, I guess. And found my first moose for hunting because we heard him having sex. Not a dirty word, we can say it on the radio. If there are children listening, I'm sorry. Our next Storytellers reality TV show debuted this fall on Animal Planet. In fact, it's playing right about now, so she's missing her show to be on our show. Please welcome Fairbanks veterinarian Dr. D. Thornell with a story we call Wild Animals Gone Wild.
Funny. That's never happened to me before. I just don't know how that happened just now. You know, being a vet in Alaska for 33 years, most people think I work on moose and bear every single day. Just kind of wander in my front door and have a sore foot or something to work on. But usually that's not true. We see a lot of these little guys, a lot of other little furry friends that are more exotics. But I do have a couple wildlife stories that I'd like to tell you about tonight. And one of them is a really fun story. Both of them involve me versus Mother Nature. You know, she can be really tough sometimes. And when you deal with wildlife, you're actually dealing with Mother Nature. And it's sometimes very difficult, and sometimes she gives you some pretty darn good lessons. So the first one is about a moose. It's about a little bitty moose calf. Oh, you see all these animals that are out there and they're either hurt or injured and you want to bring them home. You always take a second thought about that, because there's a reason their Mother Nature takes care of them, and she has her own ways, even though they may seem harsh at times. One little moose, though, came across the river with her mother and got swept way down the stream. And unfortunately, they got separated. And someone that was going by in a boat saw the little baby and reported it to Fish and Game. Unfortunately for Fish and Game, they usually let Mother Nature take her course. But if someone has a permit that says they need a baby moose, and they've gone through all the legal paperwork, and they actually say, "We're waiting for baby moose," then they can intervene. In the case of this little moose, it sat on the river for 24 hours to make sure Mom did not come back for it. And after 24 hours, I had brought to me a beautiful little baby calf. It was the cutest little girl. Now, my first impression was, oh my gosh, you know, you've seen little fillies and colts, they about kick your brains out, they're wild. Not this one. She just came in and she was so quiet, she was scared. I'd been with Washington State University, and they told me exactly what kind of food they wanted her to have, right down to how many grams she got per pound. I had to weigh her every day, get an exact measurement, and 3 times a day at 8 hours we gave her big bottle. And that's actually where she was going to be going to, is Washington State University for a moose study they were doing on moose food. So we got my baby moose in scared, and we had to kind of put that first bottle in her mouth, and the next thing I know, she latched onto that, and within about 5 seconds the bottle was empty. And from there on out, I was Mom. She followed me everywhere, and she'd do this little whenever she wanted to go. Well, the one thing I wasn't ready for until after I said, yes, I do this, is the Washington State said, now you do know you have to sleep with the moose. And I went, oh. Okay, so we went out and we got ourselves a futon, and we proceeded to sleep with the moose. And it was very exciting until the next morning when I didn't tell me that the first thing a baby moose does when she gets up in the morning is pee, right where she slept. Yeah, so we had pee and we had all sorts of fun stuff. So this is kind of not a big deal to me anymore. But she was beautiful, and we kept her for 4 days. And at that point in time, we built this beautiful cage that she went on Alaska Airlines all the way down to Washington. And oh my God, we had her like Afghans and all this kind of stuff that we had. And we had her, one of our little rooms, our isolation room, was made into a whole moose facade. It was like fin-shee for the moose, willows. So with tears in her eyes, we closed her up, and I heard my last little... She went on the plane and went to Washington State. I found out later that we called her Musetta, which means music in Latin, because she made the little cooing noise. She later almost ended up getting a man and his wife separated permanently. She became attached to her caretaker in Washington State, and whenever his wife would come, she'd attack her. Now, I didn't know that cow moose would do that, but obviously we now know something new, but she did. So the next story that I have that's really interesting is kind of a little more on a sadder note, and I really learned a lesson about this. I happened to be dating a fish and game biologist when I got the baby moose, and I had broken up with him, and it probably wasn't the most calm, easy breakup. And I had this beautiful little beaver brought to me. It had been over off from Badger Road, funny place to find a beaver. But they were doing road work out there, and they dug up a bunch of those beaver dams, and it got loose, and it must have gone to another beaver's home, and they beat him up, and he was kind of beat up. But he was just hitchhiking out by Badger Road when somebody brought him to me. Now I know better. I'm supposed to have the permit. Fish and Game's supposed to bring it to you. And I went, this is a nice little baby beaver. We'll start calling all these, rescue places. We'll find a place for it. Otherwise, Fish and Game's going to want it to just, let Mother Nature take over. So we were on the phone, and I had one time remember visiting Manly Hot Springs and doing a clinic up there where someone had kept a baby beaver. And when they did, the baby beaver took over their home, literally, and started eating them out of house and home. I remember going into their home, their doors were like half eaten. They had holes to this down going underneath into their crawl space. Oh, none of their tables had 3 legs, or more than 3 legs. They were just totally gone. So I have a log home that we just built. I got my baby beaver, and she loves me, and she's cuddling, and we bathe. We have to put her in the bathtub, our jacuzzi tub, so she can poop and pee 3 times a day. And I started envisioning, as we kept calling more and more rescues, like, who's going to get my beaver? So one point I even said, maybe I'll bring him out to Bernie Carl at Chena Hot Springs, and I'll let him expose my beaver to the public. And then I thought, well, if that happens, I can just see it now. A fishing game's going to be right there, and they're going to nail me for exposing my beaver. And I thought, oh my God, that'll be awful. I'll never be able to live it down. I'll have my license taken away. I'll never, I'll be in trouble forever. So I started having these nightmares. I would wake up in the middle of the night because we were not finding a home for this beaver. And I started thinking my doors would be eaten, my logs would be gone, there'd be holes in my floor. And, but we were sitting one Sunday trying to discuss it, my husband and I'm like, yeah, I don't know what we're going to do. And meanwhile, I have 3 dogs that have not had a lot of attention because I've got my beaver. And I'm feeding my beaver 3 or 4 times a day with a nursing bottle, and our little wiener dog is like this. He's the most ferocious. The Doberman's over there just eyeing like, bastard. What's that beaver doing over there? We don't get any attention. And we have one beautiful dog named Laverne, and we lovingly kind of coined her the cat killer because it was the first time she ever met cats when she came to my house when I met her dad, and she almost ate my cats. So I should have known better, and along with Mother Nature and everything that was going on there, I was sleeping one night, one afternoon late, beaver on my chest, dozing, and the next thing I know, there's this huge ruckus. It was awful. I heard not one peep. All I saw was my beaver in Laverne's mouth. And she shook his little breath right out of him. I cried for days, but in the long run, Mother Nature went, Dee, you gotta have the little fish and game permit. Even I know that. So I hope my stories were entertaining tonight. I hope my friend helped me. Bubba, what do you think? Should you say goodbye? See, you like it? Want to get excited? Here, come here. Can you dance for these guys? Bubba is a friend of mine's bird, and she just is so much fun. Yes, we love you. Do you dance? Dance your dance? Oh yeah, show your wings off. Oh yeah, show your wings off. Yeah, she was supposed to be here in case you guys didn't laugh. She did. All right. Well, thank you very much. You guys enjoy the rest of the show.
Dr. D. For those of you who aren't here, that was cockatoo, I believe. Oh, I see. Thank you. And for those of you not here, we're just cleaning up after the cockatoo right now. If you'd like to see pictures of Musetta, they should be up on Facebook right now. You can go to facebook.com/darkwinternights. They are adorable. I especially like the one of Musetta looking at the vending machine. Just sort of like two worlds colliding, you know. I thought it was cool. Okay, Black Friday memories. I like to watch the insanity on TV in my PJs. It's a good way to spend Black Friday. Having another whole Thanksgiving dinner with another group of people. That's one's not enough. I arrived at Thanksgiving dinner late on Thursday and missed out on the turkey. At 2 a.m. Friday, I had to take my boyfriend to the hospital for food poisoning. I went back to his home to get some things for him, and two of his roommates asked me to take them to the hospital too. Sounds like you didn't miss a whole lot there. Our next storyteller is a graduate of the Dark Winter Nights Kids Storytelling Camp, and tonight has the distinction of being the first child storyteller to appear in one of our big live events. But she's certainly not the last, because we have two more tonight. She's going to share a story about a problem that has affected many children who live in cold climates. Please welcome Sophie Henry with a story we call Tongue-Tied.
So one cold winter day, I was at preschool and it was time for recess. So I went out to recess and I played with my friends for a little while. And after I did that, I saw a metal pole sticking out of the ground. Now, I was only 3 or 4, so I wasn't super smart. And I thought, I wonder how that pole tastes. So I walked up to the pole and literally stuck my tongue onto it. Now, the pole was cold, so I tried to take my head off of it, but my tongue was stuck to the pole. And so I tried to call some of my friends over to help me get my tongue off the pole, so like this. Help, my tongue stuck to a pole, come help me. But my friend didn't notice because she was playing with someone. And even if she did notice, I was talking kind of funny, so she probably wouldn't have understood me. So finally recess was over and everyone started heading inside, and in my head I was like, really guys, you're leaving me out here with my tongue stuck to a pole? So everyone went inside and I kept going, waving my arms like this, hoping someone would notice me. And finally a girl noticed me and she told the teacher. So the teacher came out with a cup of warm water and poured it on my tongue, and my tongue got freed. So that day I went home and I looked at my tongue, and part of it was kind of like peeled off and bloody and hurt a little bit, but after a few days it went away. And the lesson I learned from that was not to stick your tongue to a pole in the winter. Thank you.
Sophie Henry. I actually want to do a radio episode for our radio program this year on people sticking their tongues to metal in winter. So if any of you have stories about that, I want to do a whole show on that. I didn't know that was a thing. I thought that was just in A Christmas Story, but apparently it affects real people. My child was told it happened to her. So, okay, Black Friday memories. Every year we would make gingerbread houses with our kids and friends the day after Thanksgiving. Sounds like fun. Hanging out at home with family, eating leftover turkey on sandwiches, and waking up to shop at 4 a.m. and Grandma was already awake. Way to go, Grandma. All right. It's one thing to be in a dangerous situation by yourself. It's a whole other problem when your kid is there with you. Our next storyteller found herself in a tough spot that pushed her courage and problem-solving abilities to their limits. We call her story Light as a Feather. Please welcome Heather Penn.
Hi, I'm Heather, and this is my story about a hunting trip gone wrong this past September with my children, or my son. So it was a Thursday, and my husband has decided that it's time the family starts going hunting with him. He goes by himself or his friend every year, and our oldest son. So now he decides it's time for us to start going. So my oldest was working, so we took my 14-year-old daughter and my 12-year-old son. And Thursday we decided to leave, and initially the plan was we would go out Thursday night, and I would come back Monday with my son, and he would stay out for 10 days. So we went out there, we packed up and pulled the kids out of school, dropped the little ones off at Grandma's, and headed on out. I'm not allowed to disclose the exact location because my husband says it's top secret. So we went pretty far out, about 2.5 hours outside of town and to a trailhead, and got on the four-wheelers and headed about 14 miles in to our campsite. And it was pretty uneventful I led the way, and he followed with the trailer, and the kids were in between us. And we went through 2 small creeks that were not too deep, about maybe a foot deep and maybe about 6 feet wide and about 8 feet wide the other one. So there was no real issues. There was a huge hill that we told the kids to be super careful on because it's a slate hill and you'll slide down it if you're not careful. So we drove in there, set up camp, and started hunting. So Friday night was great, and we had good weather, and we're sitting there, and my husband drops the bomb on me when I say, hey, when we go out Monday, are you guys gonna, stay for a little while and help us tie everything down? And he's like, oh, no, you're going by yourself. Just you and Gage are going out, my 12-year-old son. So you're not going with me? He said, no, you got this. You're all right. So he said, okay. So I spent 2 days pretty mad at him for telling me that wasn't part of the plan, I thought. So we hunted for a while, and then come Sunday, I decided, well, he's pretty serious about this, so obviously I'm going to be doing this on my own. So my son and I said, Sunday, all right, let's get ourselves psyched up here to go, because it's just going to be us. So Monday morning, we packed up our stuff, and him and I said goodbye to Dad and Sister, and we headed out. And we made it about 10 miles, pretty uneventful, no real issues, until we came to the first creek, which was technically the second creek on the way in, and it was quite a bit higher than it was the first time we went through it. And I said, well, it's not that far across, we got this. So we floored through it, and it pushed us a little bit, but we both made it across. So then we kept on going, and we went down to the next creek, which really wasn't a creek anymore. And I looked at it, and we pulled up, and I looked at my son, and I'm like, what do you think? He's like, well, it's a little bigger. Yeah, but it's wide, right? It's not deep, it's just wide. He's like, yeah. So we stuck a stick in it, and we got this. So I started to go in, and I drove the four-wheeler in a little bit, and the next thing you know, I can feel the front end start to float a little bit, and in true Alaskan tradition, if you when in doubt, gas it out. So I floored it, and the four-wheeler went about another 6 inches before it got sucked up by the river. So I bobbed on it for a little while, and then it flipped me off and threw me into the drink and took the four-wheeler down the river. So I swam to the other side and pulled myself out, soaking wet, and my son's now trapped on one side of the river, and I'm trapped on the other. And he looks at me and he goes, what do we do? And I said, I don't know what to do. What do we do? And he's looking at me like, well, what do we do? So the four-wheeler, the only gun we have, is attached to my four-wheeler. His is on the other side with no gun, and it's now bobbing down the river. I'm like, well, I'm not getting the gun. So what do we do? So I sat there for a little while, and I said, okay, you walk upstream a bit quietly, and I'll walk downstream a bit quietly, and we'll try to see if we see a way across. There was no way across. So I said, okay, so I'm thinking, what do I do? And I said, I remember at the top of the very steep hill, there was a camp there. I said, so stay there, don't make any noise, and I'm gonna go climb the hill and see if the camp is there. So we stayed there, and he was quiet, and I climbed. It took me about 45 minutes, because I'm not in the best of physical condition. Got to the top, and the camp was gone. So I stood where the camp was, and I cried. What do I do? What do I do now? So I'm like, well, maybe there is a little bit higher of a peak. Maybe at the top of that peak, there will be a camp, because there's a campsite. So I climbed to the top of the very tippy top of the peak and stood there. There was no camp. They were gone as well. So I stood in that spot and cried. And I said, now what do I do? So then I had to make the choice. It was about 3 miles to the road in the middle of nowhere in our undisclosed location, hoping that I could find somebody. And of course, you'd heard the stories about places way out that didn't like people. And I thought maybe I'd get murdered if I went out there. So I thought maybe that's not the best idea if I don't get murdered or eaten by something in the way out there. So I decided, of course I can't leave my kid. So I traipsed back down the hill, and about 3/4 of the way down, there was an old, probably 1970s snow machine sitting there with an old rope around it. And I said, well, maybe if I salvage this rope, I can use this rope to get back across the river. So I'm almost down the hill, and I can hear my son yelling, Mom! Mom! Like, oh my God, he's gonna make a bear come. So I start running towards, and I'm like, I'm right here. He's like, you were gone forever. I thought you died. I'm like, okay, I had to climb the hill. So I've got the rope, and I'm looking, and he's probably about 30 feet away from me across the river, and I said, all right, here's the plan. I'm gonna tie the rope to myself, you're gonna tie it to the four-wheeler, and you're gonna gun it and drag me across the river. And he looks at me, and he's like, really? What if the rope falls off? I'm like, well, I don't know. He's like, I'm not doing that. I said, okay. All right, so shimmy up the tree. You're gonna tie it to the top of the tree, and I'm gonna Tarzan across. He's like, I'm not climbing the tree. I don't wanna climb the tree. I'm like, oh my God, how am I gonna get across? So off to my left, there was a log that had fallen across the river, and the bottom part of it was submerged in the river, but it was the only way to get across. The four-wheeler was gone. So I said, so you're gonna crawl across the log to me, and together we'll go find help. So he walks over to the log, and he looks at it, and says, I'm not climbing across the log. I said, well, your side's big. You've got the big side. Just crawl across, and then when you get close, I'll just rip you over. I'm not crawling across the log. So I said, okay, I guess I'm crawling across the log. So I traipsed through the river, and it was probably about waist deep, traipsed through, got over as close as I could, and climbed up on a grass berm, put my hands on the log. And I said, all right, I'm gonna cross the log. So I crossed over, and the entire time I was crossing the log, if anybody has kids, the movie Horton Hears a Who, I just kept going, I'm as light as a feather, all the way till I got to the other side. And I made it. I got over there, and I gave my son a hug, and I said, all right, let's try to lasso the four-wheeler so we can at least get the gun. So the four-wheeler's bobbing in this kind of little knoll over area that's full of water, and we spent 20 minutes or so lassoing it, couldn't get it. And I said, this day can't get any worse. And as if on cue, it starts pouring. Really? Like, how many more things can go wrong? So I climb back, we go back over, and I said, all right, let's take your four-wheeler and go back. I said, we've got 14 miles back to Dad. I said, at least then we know there's people there, we're safe. So we got back on the four-wheeler and discovered his winch was broken. So I'm like, okay, well, I guess we just can't ever get stuck. So we're just gonna have to go through everything and not get stuck. So we made it back there, and we're coming around. We have an Arctic oven tent, which glows this beautiful gold glow when it's lit. And we come back, we make it the 14 miles back in, and I can see my husband and my daughter in the distance with their binoculars and scopes looking for moose, kind of looking, heads cocked, like, what's going on? So we pull up, they're sitting up on a hill looking, and we pull up and kind of drive past them a little bit, and he walks over, and I get off the four-wheeler, and he goes, what the hell? What are you doing? I said, well, I've had the worst day ever, and I just started bawling. So he let me cry for a little while, but I knew he was really wanting to know where the other four-wheeler was. He didn't really care that I was all right. So he looks at me, and he's like, all right, all right. Where's the four-wheeler? It's in the river. And he's like, what river? There's a river. So I don't think he believed me so much, but it was already late, and we broke down, and we wound up staying there that night. And of course, the next morning, he had to cut his moose hunting trip short, break everything down, and come with us to the supposed river. So on the way there, we ran into another guy that was camped there, and he was like, well, let me see this river that you fell in. So he came with us, and sure enough, we got down there, and the river The first river that we had went through was now impassable. So it was only about 6 feet across, but you couldn't get through it. It was completely full. So we cut a trail around that and went to the part where I fell in. So we go up to there, and my husband looks and pull up to it. We're all kind of surrounding the river, and he gets off his four-wheeler, looks at it, and he goes, "That's a river. I told you it was a river. Why would you drive through that? It's a river." I don't know. It just seemed like a good idea at the time. I wanted to go home. And he's like, "I can't believe you did that." So, long story short, we wound up having to set up camp. We were stranded there, and it was an island, so it became stuck between two rivers now. So we wound up setting up camp, and we were stuck there for an additional about 7 days. And in that time, we met some people. We were stranded with 7 other families because they would come down, get stuck, and couldn't leave. There was no way out. So we made some new friends. We made some friends. Sarah, Gabe, and Izzy were our new friends, and we were slowly running out of food and rations and started eating the moose that people had killed. We didn't get a moose, but we started eating the other people's moose. And it was an interesting time, but we made people, and then eventually we wound up being able to, we watched the river every day, and for a while it got higher, and then a while it got lower. And one of the guys that had come down there had been quite a bit further out than us and had killed a moose, or a wolf, which he said was the alpha male. Well, he hadn't wrapped it properly and had drugged the scent of the wolf down to our site. So once that guy came in, for the next 3 days, we were surrounded by a wolf pack. And when you'd wake up in the morning and look out the door, you see padded little wolf feet, and you'd hear them howling at all hours. So this was a great addition to our club, I must say. So eventually we wound up being able to get out, and I had to crawl. These guys came down, military guys came down, and they wanted to get across the river because their dad was trapped on the other side. And we wound up being able to crawl back across the stupid log, my son and I, and they took us out to our car. So we wound up going out to our car, go back into Fairbanks, and round up my oldest son and 2 more four-wheelers to go try to help my family back out and bring some rations in. So we go down there, capes flying, we're there to save the day, and they're already across the river. Great. So we did nothing. So we wound up spending our last night there and not getting a moose and heading back to the car. So when we got out, it was my father's birthday when we got out, and I called him, and I told him what happened, and he was super mad. He's like, "I can't believe you would do that. I can't believe you would put yourself in that situation." And then once he finally calmed down, he was like, "That's a great story. You should tell that story." And the words of my father, he says, "The Irish people, they spin a good yarn." A week after I talked to my dad, he passed away. So I tell this story to honor my dad. I love him. Thank you.
Heather Penn. All right. Black Friday memory. Not shopping for anything. Yeah, there we go. All I do is ski and climb mountains, especially on days when everyone else is thanks grabbing. And we always went sledding with my cousins. I was standing next to my sled, and my feet went out from under me. I chipped my bottom front tooth. I showed my dad, and he said, "Don't tell your mother." As soon as I got home, my mom looked at me and said, "How did you chip her tooth?" I never figured out how she knew so quickly. Later in life, I was a teenager, I asked if I could get the tooth fixed. We went to our family dentist, and after getting the estimate, my mom said, "After she signs her movie contract, we will get it fixed." I still have a chipped bottom tooth. Our next storyteller's father told a story at Dark Winter Nights, our live event a year ago, which makes them the first father-son Dark Winter Nights pair. Please welcome Harper O'Brien with a story we call Something's Kicking Me.
This summer, my Grandpa Joe flew up from Florida to drive to Alcan to California with us. The week before we left, everybody was telling their scariest bear stories. So when we left, he was both intrigued and petrified of bears. The 3rd day in, we were driving to Watson Lake in the Yukon Territory, and we had been seeing bears all over the road. We finally drove into the campsite. we had dinner and set up our tent and went to sleep. We kind of felt like a row of tacos. That night, at 4 o'clock in the morning, my Grandpa Joe said, "There's something out there." My mom was thinking, yeah, but then she heard this. So she was like, oh. I was annoyed because I had been sleeping with my back on a rock all night, so I told them to be quiet. Then my Grandpa Joe shot out of his sleeping bag and said, "That's it, it's kicking me." My mom was thinking, what on earth kicks you? My dad was getting on his contacts as fast as he could so that he'd see what was out there. Right before he went out, my Grandpa Joe said, "I wouldn't go out there if I were you." But he did. I'm not sure what he was expecting, but he found out squirrels had been nibbling off clumps of pine cones and they had been falling and hitting the space where Grandpa Joe's head was. After that, he felt kind of embarrassed, and we gave each other road nicknames, and his was Kicking Squirrel. Now he even signs his emails as Kicking Squirrel. 4 days later, on the Oregon coast, right before we went to bed, my mom asked my dad if we should bring the bear spray into the tent. He said, "Nah, we don't need to." That reminded my Grandpa Joe to ask this question: why aren't we spraying the bear spray around the tent and ourselves before we go to bed? We explained to him that it wasn't a bug spray. You spray in the bear's face when you're nose to the nose with the bear. He didn't want to get nose to nose with the bear, so he gave up on that idea. He felt embarrassed, but hey, he's from Florida. We finally made it to California, and he got his first good night's rest in days. But I don't think he's ever going to drive the Alkid with us again. Thank you.
It's got to run in the family, I think. Harper O'Brien. Okay, more memories. My favorite Black Friday memory: having your mom shout at you, "Come on!" Get it? Fishing. Okay. This is not my best memory, but it's a lasting one. My buddy and I were trying to get Carl's Jr. at 3 in the morning. All good stories start with trying to get Carl's Jr. at 3 in the morning. Unfortunately, they were closed. Who would think? So we decided to go back to his house. I was about to pull out when I saw a bunch of cars across the street. I said to myself, "Oh yeah, it's Black Friday." I pull out and my friend goes, "Curtis, Curtis, Curtis!" Next thing I know, an oncoming car slams into the side of mine. Since then, I've got a new car, and I'm about to graduate college. It had a happy ending, so yeah. Our last storyteller before intermission is a living example of my prophetical abilities. A year ago, I introduced him at our live event as a champion dog musher before he was technically a champion dog musher. 3 months later, he won the Yukon Quest sled dog race. I'm seeing a vision now. Yeah, it's becoming clear. Please welcome our next Iditarod champion, Brent Sass, with his retired dog, Silver.
Now I got to live up to that one, huh, Rob? All right, well, we're going to give it our best go. All right, well, thanks a lot for having me tonight. And, of course, this guy here, he's really the star of the show. He's the star of my life. He's my best friend. He's been my best friend for the last 14 years. He makes me cry. I'm going to start crying before I even start. This is Silver, and I got him when he was 5 weeks old, and he has pretty much been at my side ever since. We've had more amazing adventures. He's taught me more things you can even imagine. We ran 6 Yukon quests together before he retired, and I decided that I just wanted a whole bunch of Silvers, so I bred him in my entire kennel. 12 of the 14 dogs that were my Yukon Quest team are out of him, and he is a living legacy in my eyes. So, anyways, the story tonight, it's an amazing story. I feel like it is something that sort of epitomizes my entire career. When I first got into dog mushing, I really just wanted to be out in the woods. I used the dogs to travel, go caribou hunting, and Silver and I learned together to just go do things and not have any fear about doing it. And he was my best role model out there on the trail. And so we ran 3 Yukon quests, and I was really broke, and I didn't have any money, and I was wondering how I was going to actually get it together to continue racing. And I figured the best way to do this is to figure out a way to make money with dogs, right? So we had been traveling, I say we, me and all my friends have been traveling with the dogs in the wilderness for the last 4 or 5 years, 6 years, gained a lot of confidence and decided that guiding was maybe the next step. Like, that was the next place to go and give it a shot and maybe make a little bit of money in the process and have fun. That was my main goal. Was I didn't want to go get a job. Jobs are terrible. So I just decided that we would start searching around, and through a lot of other circumstances, I got an opportunity to throw my hat in the ring to guide a Norwegian dog mushing school, a school of kids from Norway that wanted to come over and have an adventure in Alaska. And this Norwegian guy was going to come and visit me at my kennel and sort of interview for the job. And I didn't have anything. I had like 4 sleds, and they're talking about guiding 20 kids, and I'd done a lot of stuff in the wilderness, but I had no guiding experience other than, me and my friends out having a good time. So he shows up, and I pull out a map on the hood of my truck, and I'm like, yeah, we're gonna go here. This trail here will be great. There's no trail there, but we'll put the trail in. And I'm talking about the middle of the Brooks Range now, like where people don't go. I have a good buddy who has a lodge out there, and we were going to go there, mush and ski jor in. I had this grand plan that 6 people would mush, or 7 people would ski jor, 7 people would mush, and I created this big plan in my head and sold it to him, and thinking, this is just going to get my foot in the door. There's no way this guy is going to choose me. I mean, I don't have any credentials other than I've run the quest a few times. He takes off, and 2 weeks later I get an email from him, and he's like, we want you to do the expedition. And I'm like, huh? Oh, okay. I guess we got to start figuring out how to make this happen now, So fast forward 7 months, and I've run another Yukon quest. Good boy. Get comfortable, Silver. And I've run another Yukon quest, and I've somehow put together the logistics thanks to some amazing friends and the crew of people that I had to help me make it all happen. 2 of these key elements are right down here, Josh Horse, Tom Walker. They are my confidants in all of this. And we get to the trailhead after pulling a truck a good portion of the way up the haul road. That's a whole nother story. We barely made it to the haul road with our 40-some dogs and all the gear and supplies to guide 16 kids or 14 kids and 2 instructors to the Brooks Range. And there's a whole other story. We put the trail in, we cached food the whole way through overflow and epicness with snow machines like 3-4 days earlier. And we didn't get in our heads that like we just had a really hard time getting in with snow machines through really deep overflow. And we were like, let's go dog mushing with kids in the middle of nowhere. And that was our attitude. And you couldn't have told us differently. And so we took the chance. We took the risk earlier on, and now it was time to show. To put the show on and make it happen. And so the trailhead, we're all lined up. We got 7 ski jors, 2 dogs per ski jor, backpacks on them. We've got 6 sleds. They got like 4 to 5. Some have 6 dogs, depending on how big the kid was. sleds that are like sort of duct taped together in a lot of ways. Like nothing matches. Everything is sort of just done, done the way we'd been doing it for the last 5 years. But now we have paying clients, and we're winging it. Basically, we're winging it. But we have all the confidence in the world. So it comes down to the snow machine, and we have the snow machine, and we got a big Siglin trailer, a big flat bottom plastic sled, and it is packed like a block that's 8 feet long, 4 feet wide, and 4 feet high of stuff, and it weighs more than it should. And I look at it and I'm like, that's a problem, but it doesn't matter because we're going. And so we take off, and it's 30 miles the first day. We get in just to Bettles. We took off from the Hall Road. This is, on our way in, it was no problem. It was a road. It was a plowed road, basically. So the first 30 miles went fairly smoothly. Crashes, normal stuff, but everyone made it in. It's 40 below now. We're camped outside of Bettles. We can't barely get a fire going. But attitudes are high. We're happy. We're doing it. We're going to make it happen. And the kids are pretty good. They're feeding off our energy. That's what it's all about. It's about the attitude and the energy. And we kept them positive this first night, knowing we had 9 more nights of this and 200 miles to travel. So there was no other option. And we survived the first night. We get up, we get going down the trail, everything's going good. We get to the John River, the Malamute Fork of the John River. Now we're in the middle of the wilderness at this point. There's nobody else around. And let me tell you, the reason I got the job, and the guy told me right off the bat a little while after he gave me the job, was like, you're the only one that would take us to the wilderness. Basically, no one else was stupid enough to guide 16 people into the middle of nowhere. And so I took some pride in that. But so we get to the John River, and it's apparent that it's really overflowed. There's a lot of water on top. So we do some switching around. I get on a dog sled. I was driving the snow machine. I get on a dog sled. Tom and Josh go back. Josh goes back to drive the snow machine, and I take off to sort of break trail to make sure that we can get through. Silver in the lead. Always in the lead. And he, of course, no problem. Me and my 5 dogs, I think I had, we blaze right through it. Everybody follows behind, ski jars, dragging slush water coming up underneath, getting all their stuff completely soaked. For 4 or 5 miles, we're in this complete overflow. It's running water over the top of shelf ice. Water, like there's places where water's like boiling up out of the ice. And all these kids are wondering, when is this going to end, basically. They're completely soaked, and it's now like 25, 30 below and dropping. So I'm all happy because I'm in the front. I'm cruising right through it, thanks to Silver. And all my dogs are really well trained to run through water. So I've got confidence in the fact that the dogs are just going to drag these people through, right? The hitch is we've got a freaking snow machine back there. And I'm sort of getting a little bit of anxiety that it's not going to make it because it was a pretty hairy thing. And I've got all the confidence in the world in Josh, but it's a snow machine, and it's a little bit more out of our control than the dogs are. I get there, and I start triage, like immediately build fires, get people warm, get people dried out, get tents set up. Like that's what my mindset is, all that. And in the distance, get comfortable, buddy. No, just stay. In the distance, I hear this like revving engine. I'm like, oh God, what does that mean? And a few minutes later, Tom shows up, and he's like kind of throwing his arms in the air, and he's kind of upset, and he walks over, he's like, where's your radio? Because we had radios to communicate, and my radio was long gone dead, so I was out of touch with those guys, and he basically just, in not so many words, said that, we're screwed. Like this is bad. The snow machine is completely sunk into the river. It is in knee-deep water, up to thigh-deep water, and Josh is back there trying, but he's walking to stay warm. So the snow machine and all of that gear is sinking into the river. And so I looked at him and I said, we need to get my 8 best dogs hooked up. And they were all over, because they were with the little teams. And so we assembled the 8 dogs, and I got on the back of the dog sled, and I remember turning them around and coming around and looking back at everything. And I just told Tom, I was just like, just keep everybody alive. Keep the home fires burning. That was my message to Tom. I just said, keep the home fires burning. We can do this. So I take off, and just that time, Josh comes around the corner, and he's walking, and he's frozen. He's been in the water. Both of these guys, I've given it a valid attempt. They've been in water, up to their waist almost, trying to get the snow machine out, realizing it was a futile attempt. And so they started heading there, and Josh comes around the corner, and I remember to this day, and I know he does too, and I just looked at him and I said, positive attitude, dude. Positive attitude. We got this. As I mushed off into the distance, and through the water, and I've got 8 of my best dogs now, and in my head, my life basically depends on this. Like, every ounce of who I am has to get that snow machine out. I have to put there's no option. I'm gonna solve this problem. So the whole way there, it's about a 3-mile trek through running water, water rushing over, ice breaking down, because we're kind of breaking down the trail as we're going back and forth. And I get there, and it's carnage. It is literally carnage. There is, if you can imagine, a snow machine sunk into the river up to its seat, a Siglin sled that's got that cord of wood on the back of it, sitting, in more than knee-deep water. I didn't think twice. I jumped in, and I started just disassembling everything, taking all the ratchet straps off, and throwing all the gear as far as I could. And so I threw as much as I could, and I'd wade over on top of the ice, and I'd grab more gear and get it a little farther away, trying to get it all out of the water. And it took about 30 yards or 20 yards to get it all so it wasn't in the water and keep sinking. I'm an icebreaker at that point, like breaking the ice farther away. I get all the stuff piled up over there. I get the Siglin sled disconnected from the snow machine, and pull it out and pull it over to the dogs. The dogs have all been sitting there waiting patiently. 8 dogs looking at me going, just let us know when you need us, Dad. Just let us know when you need us. And so I hook the Siglin sled to the main line of the dogs. It runs underneath the sled. Hey, Silver, stay here. I know it's getting old on you. Silver. Anyways, I hook the main line on, I load half the gear, probably 500 to 600 pounds of weight onto that Siglin sled, and we take off. And we're mushing back over. This is the third time they've now run through, water up to their bellies at times. They're completely frosted over. The dogs are completely frosted over. I mean, their eyeballs stick out, and they're white from then on back. And we pull into camp, and I just tell these guys, let's unload this stuff as quickly as possible. It's sinking farther into the ice. So we dump all the gear off, and I tried to get the gear that they really needed, like our tent with a wood stove and some of the important things. The guides were the only ones that had a tent with a wood stove. Everybody else was like in these Norwegian tents. Norwegians are tough people, let's just put it that way. And I'm very, very fortunate for that. So we're, I turn around. So I ask these dogs, I say, okay guys, let's go. 8 dogs stand up. We loop them around, and we head right back into the fire, right back into the water. And they traipse right back through the 3 miles of total water at 40 below now. It's probably midnight. We get there. I take all the rest of the gear, load it on that Siglin sled. We immediately turn right back around and run right back over that 3 miles. It's getting worse. The water's getting deeper. It's running faster. And my headlights are dying like this. I've got 4 headlights attached to my head at this point, and they're all very, very dull, and I can barely see the leaders. So I'm completely relying on Silver. Completely relying on him to hold the line out, to take us back. And not only that, it's like there's open leads happening. I don't know when I'm just going to fall in. And so I'm completely relying on Silver and the rest of these dogs to keep us going. And it's that bond and trust that I have with Silver it's amazing. And it's been such an awesome experience to have him part of my life. And in that moment, I know. Old news to him. I realized that, this is what it's all about. I'm like really living right now. And at that moment, I'm like getting myself really worked up. I'm crying out there probably, like I'm going to start doing here in a little bit. And we get back there, we unload the stuff. They've got all the gear now there. All the kids have went to bed, but the mood was a little bit weird. Like Josh and Tom had done everything they possibly could, but there's 2 days into this expedition, and it's been kind of crazy. A little bit crazy, obviously. So I think a lot of them went to bed with like this, oh man, I don't know if this is going to happen, if this is going to finish. Maybe we're turning around tomorrow. There's major problems here. But that wasn't going to happen. I whipped the dog team around. We headed back again for a third time. And we got back there, and I'm looking at this snow machine now. And I look at the dog team, and I'm like, we got to get this snow machine out, otherwise we're donating it to the John River, because it's going to be froze solid and in the bottom of the river by the morning. So I get the team turned around, and the snow machine is kind of like this down in the ice, and I'm able to maneuver it up and break a bunch of ice and get the machine so it's got a little bit of a ramp, and I tie the machine off with that rope that's from the main line of the dogs, and I jump in the water again. At this point, I am soaked to the bone from here down, completely soaked, froze completely solid as far as my pants. I'm warm because I got so much adrenaline rushing through me that it doesn't matter that I'm totally soaked. And I get in there, and I'm like, okay, guys, this is all happening. I'm talking to the dogs like, okay, guys, I went through, I gave everybody a good pet, and I said, all we got to do is all 9 of us got to be on the same wavelength for like 3 seconds. And if we can all pull all the same time, we will get this snow machine out of here. I believe we will get this snow machine out of here. I'm having this pep talk out there at 40 below, in the middle of the John River, in the middle of the Brooks Range, knowing this is survival, this is my life kind of on the line. And I get in, and I start heaving on the back of that snow machine. I get it kind of loosened up, and I'm like, and there's water rushing, and I'm like, all right, now! And I jerk up, and they pull forward, and it kind of moves a little bit, not much. And we do that for about 5 minutes. And finally, I was like, this is the one, guys. This is the one. And I heaved, and I jerked, and I said, all right, let's go. And they all hit the line, and the snow machine popped out of on top of the ice. And I'm like, go, 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 And they got it pulled up, so we, broke a bunch more ice, and they got it pulled up to the bank, or up to the nice hard ice. And it was like glorious. I think I was rolling around in the water at that point because we had the snow machine out. I knew it wasn't going to freeze in. I moved the signaling sled over, and this is like Superman move at this point. I had no idea how I moved an Arctic Cat snow machine up on its side, put the signaling sled underneath it, tipped the sled back, tipped the snow machine back on the signaling sled, hooked the signaling sled up, and said, let's go, guys. And we pulled the snow machine back to camp, the 3 miles on the signaling sled, pulled it up on the bank, and everyone had went to bed except for Josh and Tom and the instructor. And I just told the instructor, I said, we'll get up tomorrow and we'll continue on down the trail. I'm not sure how that's going to happen yet, but we're going to do it. And so we went to bed. Josh and Tom and I sat in the tent, powwowed. Again, like positive energy. These guys were on board. They have followed me into the fire a million times since then and before then, and we had the confidence. And I have a couple things that I do for these moments that I have done ever since this day is I bring a Hawaiian shirt and Hawaiian shorts along on these trips. And so in the morning, I put on the Hawaiian shorts, I put on the Hawaiian shirt, and I walked out of the tent like nothing had even happened the night before. And I walked around, I checked in with all the kids and said, you guys ready for another day of mushing? And everyone was happy and excited. They were like, really, we're going forward? I was like, yeah, why wouldn't we go forward? They were looking at a frozen snow machine and everything, like a whole heap of frozen stuff. Well, what about don't worry about that stuff. I'll deal with it. So they took off, Josh and Tom leading the way. We got all the teams out. We had to switch a bunch of stuff around because I needed a couple more dogs. And it's a long story from then on out, but we made it to the lodge 4 days. These guys would guide the kids, do all the work basically, and I hooked that snow machine sled with everything. I culled everything I possibly could, so now it was maybe a half a cord of wood on the back of this signaling sled, and with 7 dogs, I pushed the sled all day long. I'd get into camp about 3 hours behind everybody, completely exhausted, ready to fall over dead. And then we'd have everything for the camp. The next day we'd get up, everyone would leave. I'd sit there and go, here we go again, and then I'd do it again. And we made it to the lodge, and by the time we got to the lodge, we were dialed, we were using stuff up as we went. It was no problem. We got to the lodge, spirits were high. You could just see in the kids' eyes that they had seen the light. They had seen something that they hadn't never seen before, and they probably hoped they'd never seen it again. But we turned around, we mushed back, we got back to the broke down truck that now we had to deal with and figure out how to get 45 dogs and all the stuff back down the haul road, but that didn't matter at all. I eventually spent 3 days on the side of the haul road with 40 dogs waiting for a tow truck to come pick us up and haul us back home. That's a whole other story. But we got back home, and I got an email from the instructor. I was really scared. Like, I had really put a lot of people, I put a lot of people out there, and I was a little worried about what the reaction would be. And he emailed me, and he said that you had changed the lives of 14 kids, and that there's no better experience you could have ever given them. And it made me so happy and proud. And the last line of the email was, "We want you to continue doing this expedition. We would love to start planning for next season." And I just couldn't believe it. I was just like, this is amazing. That was 7 years ago. Since then, I've guided over 100 kids on that expedition. We've went around to different parts of the state with them. We go to the Arctic now. Josh and Tom are still my right-hand men. I couldn't do it without them. And these dogs. It really all boils back down to the dogs. The connection and bond that we have, has made my life amazing, and I can't thank Silver and the rest of them enough. Live and love Alaska. Take chances, take risks, and just get out there and do it. That's my advice to you all.
Thank you. Brent Sass and Silver. What would you think of a song from Thought Trade and Emily Anderson right now? Would that be nice? What are you going to play for us?
This song is called Escape Route.
Okay, this is Thought Trade and Emily Anderson.
By now I'm usually planning my escape route, sifting through the words I choose to tell you that I'm leaving. By now I'm usually working on my next move, a different city, different tune, a different set of reasons. But you don't understand how you ruin my plans. I
Trade and Emily Anderson. All right, it's time to pick our audience storyteller tonight. I hope that if you turned in that sheet that you were ready to tell your story. Because if you're not, you're going to get ready here in a minute. Okay, you remember the rules? No? Okay, well, this will be fun. At least watch your language, or KUAC is never going to broadcast this live again, so I'd appreciate that. Okay, when I call your name, you can come up to the front right here. Colleen hopefully will be around to show you how to get up here. All right, so let's bring in our storyteller's name. Send in Silver, please. With this, oh no, it's with the bird. We're doing the bird instead. Bubba's bringing in the...
Bubba, here you go, Bubba. Oh, he was supposed to hand it to you.
You're taking it back? Oh, thank you.
He likes to see you bend over.
Oh, spare the radio people that. Maybe you picked it up on the mic. Okay, so telling a story I have never heard before that does not have a single naughty word in it. Aporn Stein? Did I say that correctly? All right. Yeah, this feels like Price is Right or something like that. Come on down.
Wow.
All right. Yeah, wow. Are you ready to tell a story?
My hearts are pounding now.
Mine too, huh? Hold me.
I'm glad to be here. This is my first time here. And this story, I'm thinking of my friend that cannot be here tonight. His name is Gary Harmstad, because he broke 12 ribs, so he has to be at home. But anyway, I hope he's listening to this. But anyway, this story happened in the southeast Alaska. It's not too cold, but it's a summer night. I'm sorry, it's not a dark winter night. This was happened in 2010 when I was with Stan Justice. He's in here, but correct me if I tell something wrong. But anyway, yeah, when now I lost my turn with Stan, forgive me. Anyway, we were have a plan to kayak from Baranof Island, from Sitka, toward the Chichagov Island to hike Mount Edgecombe, which is a pristine volcanic mountain that the Japanese think that it's just like a Fuji mountain. So what happened, we rent a double kayak and kayak from Sitka to Sitka Sound. We look for the closest passage that we can reach the other side of the island. So we waited until the weather is calm before we cross. So we did all right because the weather was calm and we made it through. But before we go through there, we stopped a couple times on the other side, on the Sitka side, on the beach, and harvest the clams and seaweed. Oh, we have a blast because they're all fresh seafood. So when we get there on Brent Beach, there was a cabin there. We took a chance. So we thought that, we might have a chance to get into the cabin for free. But, we were cheap. But anyway, somebody already took the cabin. So we have to tent out. So we found a campsite. And it was just nice and flat and good, so we picked that and put on the camp and get ready for dinner. And Stan went out to go get the water. He took the little container, go get the water to cook for dinner. And he came back so soon. He saw the 2 cups. I don't know, did you see the mother there too? Yes, he said he saw the mother there too. He came back, get the bear spray, went back to get the water. Like, Stan, you sure you want to do this? But we have to eat dinner. He went back to the creek, got the water, and came back safely. So, but anyway, that evening we got entertained by the 2 cups. They were playing tearing apart the trash bag. Somebody probably have left there, and growling, make that noise. So we were entertained and watched them play in the distance on the beach. And then at night, we were feeling pretty safe. But 2 weeks before that, I heard the story that a bear got in the couple in a tent and they were dead. So, but anyway, it turned out that in the middle of the night, we heard that bear little cubs playing sound come toward the tent. And I don't know, we camped on the bear path. So, right, but anyway, in the middle of the night, when we heard that bear coming toward, I started to get frightened. Stan, where's the air horn? We don't have the gun, but we feel safe because the people in the cabin about 300 feet away have the gun. But I don't know if they know that. Anyway, I'm start shaking when I think about it because I couldn't find an air horn that I put right by my head. Oh, Stan, where's the bear horn? Bear. Okay, I found the horn finally, and then Stan got his pocket knife. It's a sweet pocket knife in his hand, and I hung the horn once. The sound ran away. I mean, the bears ran away. The sound far away, and I still heard them in the distance, not too far yet. We hung the horn one more time, and the sound further away. Well, I didn't know what happened. We went to sleep. I didn't know when I went to sleep. And woke up in the morning. Stan has his Swiss Army knife in his hand, open. I don't understand how we can sleep with that. But we did survive. We came back to town. We hiked the Mount Edgecombe the next day and spent one night in the cabin out there, half of the hunter shelter, something like that. I was scared the whole time. But anyway, we managed to climb Mount Edgecombe and came back. And on the way, we have to carry our tent thing. And my hand was have sleeping bag and gear, so my hand is not free. So it's Stan also. Stan was afraid walking in front of me, and then he stepped on a path, on the wooden path. There was a wooden path there, and then it tipped over. So I tipped over the wood because when he stepped on, the other side came up. I tipped over. I have no hand, so I knocked myself like, oh man. Luckily, I kept my teeth. Anyway. Okay. Now we came back and we camped for one more night and then decided to go back. And we had enough of bear story. Stan get to choose the place that he picked, that we're gonna camp out another night in a safe cove where there is no salmon run and it's very quiet. So we came in, I thought, oh, this is beautiful, it's a nice place. So we set up the camp because it's always flat there when the bear path is. So we pick a good path. But anyway, I love mussel, and I found mussel on the shore. So I picked up mussel. I didn't tell Stan what the plan is, but I plan to eat the clams because I love them. So I picked them, and Stan not very happy with my decision because we are in a bear country. But anyway, he made me go further away from the tent, but down on the beach to cook the mussel. And he refused to eat the mussel. I ate them all, but I was happy. Sure enough, after a while, there was a bear. There was a bear on the entrance where we came from. Luckily, the bear didn't see us or didn't hear us or didn't smell us because it was upwind. So we saw the bear, Did we honk the horn, Stan? We did honk the horn. The bear ran away in the bush and disappeared for a while. So we stay out in the beach in the open so we can fight with the bear if we have to. All we have is the bear spray and the Swiss Army knife. So, but anyway, after a while, the bear showed up on the other side. This time, the bear is downwind from us, so it can smell us. Yeah. So, and I honked the horn. It went away. So we survived the trip, and we here to tell the story. Thank you, Stan.
Aporn Stein. Okay, some more Black Friday memories. I was on my way to pick up my friend and my truck broke down on the Richardson Highway. At First Badger exit, some crazy guy pulled over, knew my dad, and gave me a ride to Dave's shop. Dave's shop, I guess. Alternator ruined my first Black Friday. Yeah, sad. I had never been early shopping before. I went at 3:30 a.m. with my best friend and wife. My friend's wife was tackled while reaching for a Lego set. I was body checked walking down an aisle, and my friend was rammed by another cart. It's worth it for those savings, I gotta say. Working retail at 5 a.m. to give away Looney Tunes keychains for 10 hours. That's a great plan. Okay, our next storyteller has arguably traveled more of the Arctic under his own power than anyone else in history. He's walked and skied 6,000 miles without support or sponsorship. Whenever he's tried to take people with him, people younger than himself, I'd like to add, they always have had to scratch due to injury or fatigue. A colleague of mine who's hiked with him says he doesn't even sit down to eat when he's hiking, which just boggles my mind because, I mean, that's half of why I eat during hiking is for the excuse to sit down. His book is called Canyons and Ice. We have copies available here tonight, and he'll be available after the show to sign them for you. And there's a link to his book on our website, darkwinternights.com, or it's canyonsandIce.com. Tonight we'll discuss his encounters with bears, rabid foxes, devastating frostbite, and more. Please welcome Dick Griffith. Have a seat right here. How are you? What do you think of our little living room here?
This is great. It's kind of like the presidential debates. Got a moderator and a speaker.
Are we going to be okay on this mic? I saw a signal, but it was dark and... Could you crowd surf Matt Hutter up here so he can tell me if we're going to be okay? I think we're going to be okay. So, first of all, 6,000 miles. What keeps you moving? You talk in the book about sometimes not even knowing why you're out there.
The what?
What keeps you moving?
Oh, what keeps me moving? It's my two legs.
Okay.
I have wonderful legs.
I'm getting a sense this is going to be like a ventriloquist act or something like that.
You know, I have a hard time hearing. But, when I was young, I had an eagle. And then I reached maturity at the age of 50. And it was just time a year to go. And I was addicted.
Addicted to walking by yourself through the wilderness?
Yeah, I go by myself because my partners don't do very good. I lost a lot of partners.
Well, can you tell us what happened to them?
Do I what?
What happened to them?
Well, they get lame. Most of them get crippled. And And they get tired and discouraged and disgusted, and they leave me.
Yeah, honestly, I'm getting a little discouraged, I think. Oh, it's just on the walks that they... Okay. You say in the book that Mother Nature wants us dead. What made you feel that way, that Mother Nature wants us dead?
Well, not really. I've had a lot of personal scrapes out there, but none of them were serious, really.
I don't know if you all can hear the audience reaction a little bit on that.
You don't have to believe any of it.
I don't. I've seen the pictures, actually. How about answer this? How did you get the nickname Black Ass?
I didn't think we could use that word, but okay.
It's okay.
I had walked from Kaktovik to Anaktuvik, and I've gone from Anaktuvik to Kotzebue, and I skied from Nuiqsut to Anaktuvik, and then I decided to keep going south, and I got to Anaktuvik, and the wind was blowing 30 miles an hour. It was 30 below zero. And the native says, you can't make it, the snow's too deep. And so I threw all my stuff away. I threw my stove away, my tent away, and I took a great sleeping bag, a pot, and some matches, and some food. And I went south. I was skiing down. I tried to reach the tree line where I could build a fire. Once I got in the tree line, I was safe. And I wasn't paying attention because I was skiing real fast. It was downhill. It was great. And the wind blew up underneath my coat, and that didn't bother me too much. And I decided when it got dark, I had to camp. And so I didn't reach the tree line. I couldn't build a fire. So the only thing I could do was dig a trench, throw my sleeping bag in a trench. And when I opened up my sleeping bag, I found out that it was off the track. So I took my gloves off, put it back on the track. I froze all my fingers, but my 2 index fingers, in 30 seconds. It was that cold. It was 40 below zero, and the wind was 40 miles an hour. So I dumped my sleeping bag in the trench, and the snow drifted over the top of me. I got warmed up. And there was something wrong with my butt. I felt back there, it was like cardboard. And I said, man, this is bad, But I survived the night, and next day I put my skis on. I could hardly get on my skis, and I was pulling a sled. And I just kept, we talked, remember the musher was talking about going down the John River? Well, I did this, and breaking trail down there, a lot of overflows. And it took me 6 days to get to Crevice Creek. There was a homestead there, operated by Bill Fickus and Lil Fickus. I got there at 9 o'clock at night. It was still 30 below zero. The wind was still blowing, and what happened was I was freezing. My butt froze a little bit harder every day, a little bit deeper. And Bill flew me into Bettles, and I caught an airplane to Anchorage. Of course, everybody moved to the back end when I got on because I smelled so bad. It was really bad. And I just barely made it to Providence Hospital. I was there for a month, and I had extensive skin grafts. And I got out of the hospital. I was on crutches, and I had to work standing up. And it's when something like this happens, a lot of derogatory names you get. My friends call me Black Ass. My colleagues call me a half-assed engineer. Yeah, that made me mad. Yeah. But that's enough for that story.
Okay. Yes, thank you. You stopped carrying a weapon as you traveled. Why did you stop carrying a rifle or a gun? You don't carry a weapon?
You know what? I went across the North Slope in the summertime. I carried a rifle because at that time that's the only way I knew how to eat was to shoot caribou. But I hate mosquitoes. You know, there's lots of mosquitoes up there. So I started traveling in the wintertime. And I traveled I went from Bettles to Nenana, and I went from Bettles to Allakaket to Tanana, went over the Ray Mountains, and eventually worked my way down to Unalakleet. And when I was 63 years, I retired on a Friday, and I was 63 years old, and I decided to ski from Unalakleet to Barrow, which is 900 miles, and I actually made it in 63 days. And of course, there's polar bears. You know, you're supposed to be worried about polar bears and wolves and all this stuff, and polar bears are nothing.
I feel the same way. They're totally overrated.
But you know, the fox is so horrible. When I was out there, 40% of them were rabid, and just before I got to Kivalina, it was early in the morning, I saw this shadow next to me, and he grabbed my leg. The shadow did. That's all I saw, and I was in my sled and a harness, and so I reached back and I tried to stab the rough fox with my pole, and I missed him, and I fell down on the slick ice, and I was tied to my skis and tied to the sled, and the fox got me. He got me again on the glove. He got me on the chest, and of course I knew immediately I was rabid. There was no way because he did a number on me. And but I noticed that it didn't break any skin, but I was still rabid, and so I said I got to get to Kivalina. And I need help. And so it was a shortcut. There was some soft ice out there, and all I had to do was cut across this soft ice, and I'd get to Kivalina quick. And I got out there about a quarter of a mile. I fell into the ocean. I dropped through the ice, and it's really not a big deal. You just break the ice off, and you climb back up. And it was
simple,
10 below.
Really. When you think about
it wasn't really cold.
the ocean, the frozen ocean. Just so I want to clarify, the frozen ocean wasn't really that cold.
It's what?
The ice under the water under the ice wasn't that cold.
No, because it just froze. It's what you call new ice. There's fast ice and there's new ice. When you travel in the ocean, you got these terms that goes with it. There's pressure ridges and tide cracks, and it's all kinds of garbage out there. But I fell in and I got out, and of course I was froze immediately like a popsicle, but it's nothing really. You just get in your tent and you start your little stove up, and you heat up some boiling water in a halogen bottle, and you thaw out your clothes, and that's it. And when I got to Kivalina, I told the natives, I says, I'm rabid. And they laughed at me. They looked at my little mark on my leg, and I said, that's nothing. The kids get bit all the time just going to school. Yeah. And so I said, gee, yeah, But my problem was I told people in Anchorage. And you never tell people in Anchorage, I come from Anchorage. Don't tell them anything. Yeah. But the doctors wanted me to come back and be a man and get my, the long shots, whatever they are. And I kept on going. I got up to Point Hope, and I went past Point Hope. And so the natives thought I was kind of incompetent. They figured that I wasn't rabid, but I was a white man. I didn't know anything. And so they thought I'd went out on the ice, because the ice goes back and forth, it goes back in the ocean and it runs back up on shore and it goes back out. I always stay on the ice because that's the best place to camp, because there's shelter. So from Barrow, they sent a helicopter down to pick me up. And the helicopter couldn't find me. They come 300 miles. So the next day they sent 2 airplanes to find me, and they finally found me. So this rabies thing went on and on forever, but I didn't go back and get my shot, so I just toughed it out. And you said something about guns, right?
Well, I just want to say, with perseverance, you too can conquer rabies. It's really just sissies. You die in 72 hours. You wrote in your diary that you almost wished that you did have rabies on this trip so you could back out of the trip gracefully. And my question is, gracefully for who? Who are you worried about impressing at this point? Who are you worried about? You said you wanted to back out gracefully.
Well, I wanted to get out of this. I was suffering up there because I still didn't know how to travel in the Arctic. Because I had a little gasoline stove was worthless, and I had a frozen sleeping bag, and I just wanted that was a graceful way to abandon the trip at Point Lay or Wainwright and get the hell out of there because things were tough up there. But I just kept on going. I kept on going. The Barrow made it anyway. But you see, if I had rabies, I could go back and be a nice warm place and for a change. Yeah.
Rabies is such a relief, I know. But I'm trying to get at are you trying to impress someone when you make these trips? Or are you trying to prove something to someone?
I didn't have any sponsors. I only had one sponsor, and that was my wife, my working wife. You young guys out there, take notes.
I left my pen over there, but
yeah, a working wife is handy to have. Yeah. Where were we anyway?
I lost track. You're talking about sponsors, I think. Sponsors? You had no sponsors, but your working wife was your sponsor.
Yeah, my working wife.
Who are you trying to impress with all this? Is my ultimate question.
I wasn't trying to impress anybody. I just, I did. There was a lot of stuff I did that was really more impressive than this, but we'll not go over that tonight.
Are you talking about this right now?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
I won't take that personally. Maybe Silver has rabies. We could get Silver to bite you. You talk about reading books on these trips, and that you have a certain quota for a number of pages you have to read a night. What part does reading play in your travels?
It played the biggest part.
Why?
Because I had to read books in order to... By this time, when I got to Barrow, I couldn't suffer anymore. I decided I had to do something. I had to keep dry at night. I wanted a warm sleeping bag, dry clothes, so I got a wood stove that weighed 8 pounds. Can of gasoline weighs 8 pounds, so I got a wood stove. And at nighttime, I'd have to read 6 pages. 3 pages for in the morning and 3 pages for night. And, I read lots of good books. I read the Book of Mormon. They didn't care if I burned it as long as I read it. So I read it.
Did they really say that? Did you ask them about that?
It's but not just like the Koran, you know?
Yeah, thank goodness you didn't read the Koran. But just to clarify, you had to read to start the fire. You used the pages that you read. I mean, this is the ultimate in efficiency. You read a book and then you tear the pages out that you read and make a fire. And your light gets lower, your pack gets lower. I'm just going to stop. Your pack gets lighter as you go along as you read, and you start fires with the pages, right? Is that how it works?
Yeah, well, I don't know. collected a lot of wood on the way. There's a lot of wood that comes out of the Mackenzie River, and if you're like me, you like pieces of wood, like some women collect teacups, you know. I collected wood until my sled got heavier and heavier.
At one point, I think you came across some rather interesting reading. In one of the villages, you picked up some books?
Yeah, I forgot about that. I forgot my books when I got to Kaktovik. And I stayed at Waldo Arms, and they had a lot of Harlequin romance, a whole library. So I gathered up a whole bunch of them. And they make good fires. They're hot. Yeah, they're hot.
They're hot books, I get it. In all these travels, Dick, have you learned anything about life and what it means to be human and spending all this time by yourself out in the wilderness?
Why do I...
In all this time that you spent traveling by yourself in the wilderness, you have a lot of time to yourself. Have you learned anything about what it means to be human, to be the human existence?
You know, I didn't learn anything.
Dick Griffith, ladies and gentlemen. Dick Griffith. Once again, he'll be in the lobby after the show with his book. Sign us for you can ask him more interesting questions about his reading and his adventures. Sometimes when we're just trying to do something nice, things go horribly, horribly wrong. Our next storyteller was only trying to pick up an early birthday present for her boyfriend, but life just wouldn't cooperate. Please welcome Kat Betters with a story we call Frankenerman.
Is that about right? There you go. Thanks.
Oh, that's a tough act to follow. Is anyone else as cold as I am listening to Dick and Brent talk? So my story actually takes place in the summertime. It's about 5 or 6 years ago, and I was driving home, and I was going up and over Belaine Hill. And as I was descending into the valley, I saw something little and brown laying in the middle of the road. And my first thought was it was a squirrel. And we've all seen one of those, so I thought I'd just keep driving. But as I got closer, I realized that in fact it was an ermine. Now, for those of you who don't know what an ermine is, they're also called a short-tailed weasel. They're in the weasel family. They're about 7 to 10 inches long and very cylindrical. They look as though they could probably run through a paper towel tube. Their legs are situated way back in the caboose, and the front legs are way up front, so that when they run, they lope along like a slinky. They're white in the winter with a little black tail, and in the summer they're brown with a white underbody, and that's what I saw laying in the road. Now, they're not particularly uncommon or rare or endangered or anything, but they're pretty elusive, and you never really see them anywhere. So it was really disheartening to see it laying in the road. And also, they are terribly, terribly cute. They're so cute it hurts. You literally want to squeeze the cute out of them. So do yourself a favor tonight when you go home and Google pictures of ermines. You won't be disappointed. So it was even doubly more disappointing to see it lying in the road. But at the same time, I was also, at this time, I was dating a man who works at Fish and Game in the Education and Outreach Department. He's a biologist and a naturalist and a tracker. We'll call him Mike. he's over there. He can verify the second half of the story for me. So at the time we were dating, the next day also happened to be his birthday. So I was like, woohoo, there's an ermine laying in the middle of the road. Early birthday present. Number one girlfriend. So for those of you who don't know Mike in the audience, you probably think this is quite macabre and weird, which it is. But if you know Mike, you know that this is something he'd actually be really, really excited about. So I decided I'm going to get him the ermine, and I pull over on the side of the road. And I pop the trunk to get my Ziploc bag out, because when you date a biologist, you have things in your car like Ziploc bags, latex gloves, because you never know what you're going to find on the side of the road on the drive home, case in point. So while I'm doing this, another car pulls up directly across the road from me, and my first instinct was, he wants my ermine. Yeah, so as if any other rational human being would be driving around town looking for roadkill to bring home. But since that's what I was doing, I kind of got my hackles up and I started walking very quickly out into the road to get the ermine. And as I'm doing this, the gentleman gets out of the car, and he's this big, burly dude. And he yells over to me, "Do you know what that is laying in the road?" And he looks really distraught and actually on the verge of tears. And he goes, I said, "Yeah, it's an ermine." And he goes, "Well, I've never seen one before." He said, "I'm the one who hit it." He goes, "I feel terrible. Do you think there's any way we could take it to the veterinary clinic that's at the top of the Blaine Hill?" At which point I'm actually holding the ermine in my hand. Now, if this thing was going to be okay, I wouldn't be holding it. And also, it's flopped over my hand like a wet noodle. There's blood coming out of its nose, and even though I can feel a faint heartbeat, this thing's a goner. And I tell him as much, and I said, "Hey, but it's going to get a second life in the Education Outreach Department at Fish and Game. It'll get taxidermied and put into their collection so people can learn about ermines and how cute they are." And he doesn't seem all that happy with this outcome, but he doesn't try to take the ermine away from me, and he gets in the car and drives home. Me, I'm still standing in the middle of the road, so I start walking over to my car, and I put the ermine inside the Ziploc bag, and I zip it nice and tight shut, and I go to my car, and I put it inside of a box that's in my trunk so it doesn't slide around, close the trunk, turn around, and drive home. I'm home for about, half an hour when I remembered there was something I forgot to do in town. So back into town I go, and I think, well, while I'm doing that, I'll swing by Fish and Game and drop off Mike's birthday present early. Won't he be excited? I get to Fish and Game. He's not there, but everyone else that I know is. So I spend the next half hour talking to everybody when finally someone says, "Oh, hey, I saw Mike out in the parking lot." So I'm perfect, like that's where he needs to be. That's where the ermine is. So I run out there. I call him over. "Sweetie, come on over. I got something for you. It's an early birthday present." He comes over. I said, "But you got to close your eyes." He dutifully closes his eyes. So I pop the trunk to get the dead ermine out of the trunk, but that's not what happens. Instead, I pull out a very alive and pissed off ermine. This poor, adorable little critter has steamed up the entire inside of the bag. It's pooped in there, it's peed in there, and it is frantically trying to crawl its way out. I feel horrible. First of all, I can't even believe what I'm seeing, that it's alive. And secondly, I can't bear to look it in there a second longer. I'm not a screamer. I start screaming and running towards the fields at Creamer's Field to let it out of the bag. I just can't bear it anymore. I'm running and screaming. Mike opens his eyes just in time to see my hind end running to the fields, dangling something. And I'm screaming so loudly that a crowd has started to gather. There's like 4 or 5 other workers outside. They all come running over. I get to the edge of the field. Mike catches up to me and knows what it is right away inside this hermetically sealed little ermine in here. And just as I'm about to open it, he yells, "Stop! No! You can't open it here! It's not its habitat!" Yeah. Habitat schmabitat. I'm still freaking out, and I explained to him that we are not walking another 10 minutes with this ermine in a bag to get it to its habitat down by the pond and by the woods. He very quickly realizes I cannot be reasoned with. There's no reasoning with me. So he acquiesces and we decide to let it go right where it is. And I remember there was this moment where there was like a palpable silence. We're letting this wild critter out of this bag and nobody knows what's going to happen. And there's just like everyone's just staring and wondering what's going to happen. And I remember thinking at one minute, ooh, what if it runs up my pant leg or something, you know? Like, nobody knows. So we get down and we spin the bag around so that the head of the ermine's going to come out the opening and get ready to open it. And I think this thing's just going to come running out to fresh air and freedom, right? That's not what happens. It turns right back around and runs to the other end of the inside of the bag and starts trying to claw its way out. And I'm like, ah! So we spin the bag back around and think, oh, this time it'll go out. Nope, not having it. Runs straight back into the back end of the bag again, trying to claw its way out. Finally, we're standing there, we're like, you know, I think we can outwit this thing, and it only weighs like 1.5 pounds, so we just shake it out. And there goes Mike's birthday present, slinking full speed across the field. And I swear to you, it's briefly stopped, looked at us. I'm certain that it scowled, mostly at me, put its feet down and just ran, never to be seen again. So we're all standing there, and everybody's just kind of absorbing the absurdity of what just happened. Mike finally breaks the silence and says, "So, Kat, how did you go about getting a live vermin into a Ziploc bag?" It's a valid question. So I surmise pretty much what's happened up till now. And he goes, so, let me see if I've got this right. It got hit by a car, put into a Ziploc, into a box, in a trunk, driven around for an hour, and when it finally came to, it was 10 miles away from where it started its day. I said, yeah, that pretty much sums it up. He said, you know, I could have you cited and ticketed for transporting wildlife without a permit. I said, yeah, honey, you do that. Thank you. Stay warm.
That's Kat Betters, and we have a little announcement here for Kat. Kat's aunt and uncle are listening tonight from Wilmot, New Hampshire. Her cousin, Allie Reed, is having a birthday today. She is also Kat's goddaughter. It is past 1 a.m. there, and they're all listening together. So thank you, KUAC, for making that possible. Okay, some more Black Friday memories. Hashtag opting outside before it was cool. Black Friday at Hatcher's Pass, Alaska. Mountain therapy always trumps retail therapy. I was visiting Fairbanks for Thanksgiving several years ago. It was -40 most of my visit. The day after, I was supposed to fly back to Wasilla to work my Black Friday shift. My flight was canceled. I was several hours late to work. I still decided to move here 4 years later. Hart, Fairbanks. Yeah, they say it's hard to leave here, but they don't specify why. My wife says a guy growled at her while in line at Walmart. She dropped her merchandise and ran. I think that's what you're supposed to do. Let's try not to growl at each other next week, okay? We'll just try and be nice to each other. Okay. Our next storyteller is another graduate of the Dark Winter Nights Kids Storytelling Camp. She's the first child storyteller to be featured in one of our radio programs. That was this fall. Her story was called Barcode Butt. Yeah, I thought so too. If you didn't catch it, I highly recommend you listen to it on our podcast in the episode called When I Was Younger Than I Am Now. Please welcome Andy Connor.
I was 6 years old when this happened, so I wasn't very smart. But me, my dad, my mom, my dog Hannah, and my 9-year-old sister Kaden were going to watch the Lego Movie. I didn't want to watch the Lego Movie. I wanted to watch Frozen. I always wanted to watch Frozen. I said, I'm not watching the Lego Movie. Yes, you are, said my parents. No, I said, and I walked downstairs. I was running away. I put about enough clothes for 2 weeks into my backpack and put a big bottle of water in. I went upstairs and said, "I'm running away." And my dad said quietly to my mom, "Oh, don't worry, honey, she'll come back." And my mom said, "Don't you want to bring any food?" And I said, "I can live off of berries." And so I started walking, and after I got down the driveway, I walked about 20 feet, and I started to get scared because I realized I didn't know the neighborhood very well, and I didn't know how to get back home very much. So I sat down in a patch of berries and started eating. About 10 minutes later, my sister Cadence started coming. "Hannah, where's Andy? Where's Andy?" She asked her dog. "Where is she?" And then I tried to hide behind my backpack and ran into the woods, but she saw me anyway. "Andy, let's go home," she said. "No." "Yes." "No." "Andy." She put her lasso around my waist and dragged me home. When we got there, when I was supposed to be watching the Lego movie, I hid in my room. I watched part of it, and I never watched the Lego movie ever again. I still hate it. And next time I run away, I'm going to go to the Goldstream store and bring money because they have ice cream there. Thank you.
Andy Connor. Mom, do you remember when I ran away? Where's my mom? She's here tonight. This is her first Dark Winter Nights ever. I got to the end of the driveway, but I wasn't allowed to go in the street, so I had to stop there. I had my stick with the little like handkerchief bag thing, like I'd seen the hobos wear in the cartoons. And then I just got bored and I went back inside, and I don't think that anyone even noticed I was gone. So it was not the devastating PR stunt that I was hoping it would be. Okay, some more Black Friday memories. I realized the night before my Thanksgiving Day flight to New Zealand that my passport was expired. Oops. Yeah. I had to brave a Black Friday doorbuster sale at Office Max to have paperwork printed for an emergency passport reissue. Mobs of people running around with printers, and I needed to use the print center that didn't even give me a discount. Oh, that's bad. Having all my shopping done so I can be in the way of disorganized people. Love to punish disorganized people. Met and had first date with wonderful woman. We eventually married. We're still together and have our 6-week-old girl with us tonight. Best Black Friday ever. Thanks for coming tonight. Our final storyteller tonight makes me look like the Paris Hilton of Alaska. He's climbed Denali more than a dozen times, once with a guitar, which I really hope was filled with snacks. Anyway, his family has the distinction of being the only family of six, whole family of six, to have climbed Denali. Please welcome Marty Rainey. I don't think I need to adjust the mic.
I could listen to Dick Griffith all night. That guy's cool. Don't get up. But thank you. I'll back off this mic a little bit. Sorry. I don't get out much. Somewhere out there's somebody with a volume knob. This is for you. Please get up.
Thank you.
You're welcome. This gentleman and Colleen Wood, is it Wood?
Yep.
Thanks. Recently came into my life, and asked me to come here and sing one song. Could I ask everyone a favor? It was snowing really hard at Hatcher Pass this morning. Can I call my mom and have her sit in on my segment? Is that okay? She doesn't know about it. Is that okay? Is it legal? All right.
Well, she doesn't swear, we're good.
She's very nice. 373. That could really backfire. What's my mom's number? No, I know. Yeah. Stand by. Yeah, I know this is unorthodox, but
You could just have her listen to the radio, too.
I don't know if they could figure that out.
Hello?
Mom?
Yeah?
Can you hear me?
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I've got you on speaker. Is that what you want?
I'm standing in Fairbanks at Lathrop High School, and this is like 1 million people here. And would you please say hi to my mom? Brent, could you help me? Brent. They all said hi. They're nice people in Fairbanks. Brent, could you help me for a minute, please? And I'll do this song. So, Mom, I'm up here. I'm going to speak for about 30 minutes. And if you want to stay with us?
Yes, I just can't. Hang on.
Let's go.
So I gotta hold this?
Yeah, well, I can't play and hold that.
Okay, so I gotta hold it here.
Mom's.
You know what? It is a long ways from Anchorage.
Yes. It's time for the show, Mom. Stand by.
Really? Okay.
Here we go.
Who is this guy?
I really care. This is for you, Mom. I really caribou you. I'm a loon when you're a whale. It's hard for me to bear, 'cause I love you so dear. I really caribou you. Your salmon, special to me. You give purpose to my life. Mom, I'm dolphin thinking of you. I wolf forget I love you. Your salmon special to me. Mom, you know I'll walrus love you. Owl never do you any wrong. If there's questions you must ask, I'll give you the straight fox. You know I'll walrus love you. But I tripped on my bucket, landed in moose nuggets. It weren't a pretty sight. Mom, I came home grumpy, saw her wiggle like a humpy, made me happy as a clam at high tide. Mom! Mom, I've told you time and time again, you make me happy when you smile. Mom, I have new eaglets. You were caught in my nets. I've told you time and time again. Mom? I'm Mastodon, something right. I woolly struck at finding you. Mom, you're unshellfish all the way. I tusk, gotta say. I mastodon, something right. I've told you time and time again. You know I'll walrus love you. Mom, you're salmon special to me. And Mother, I really caribou you. Okay, thanks. I got it. That's very nice of you. Yeah, I'm here. We got a few more minutes. I'm going to talk about our families, our lives. My mom and dad came to Alaska in a boat. They worked hard in the 60s and bought a boat and had their dream of Alaska manifest itself by way of a boat trip to Ketchikan. They lived on that boat at Thomas Basin for 5 years at least in Ketchikan. And they lived in Sitka, and I'm well aware of that area in Mount Edgecombe. And unfortunately, I quit school and left home at 16 and made my own voyage to Alaska. And I was already a logger in Prince of Wales Island in the 70s. But I always had that sense of adventure. My mom played a role in that. I mean, she came to Alaska in their own boat that they bought and sailed up here. Kind of cool. Especially, early 70s. That's a long time ago. I mean, adventures, they kayak it. Somebody pack rafted that whole thing, I guess. Cool. But my mom's cool. So I ended up getting married and having 4 kids. And as was mentioned, I don't know if we're the only family of 6. I never think about that. When people say that, I'm like, oh, wait a minute, are we? And I expect that there's like 8 families out there. I got 10 kids and we did it last week. If you are, I'm sorry. See, statistics just happen, and I've realized when you start getting more and more well-known, you've got to kind of watch how many stories you've told. So I think that one's true. The first time I climbed Denali was 1986. And it was an amazing climb, amazing adventure. I'd tried 3 years prior to do it, but as you know, many of you have probably climbed it, certainly aware of what it takes to climb it. I was like, whoa! It takes a team and people that kind of have to have some experience. Anyway, first trip in 86, it was amazing. I met a lot of cool people. That was an amazing year. I met Brad Washburn, Barbara, Jim Ockenick, UNK2, as you know, aviation. I met Doug Eating that year. I met, at 14,000 feet on the mountain, I met Vern Tejas. And Vern and I became friends, and I was going to climb it in 87, and I got a job in... Mom?
Yes?
Just checking.
They think I'm going to hang up? No.
Okay. Remember that rule that after 9 o'clock you can begin... maybe. What time is it?
About 3/4 of a glass after.
That's my mother. So in 87, I ended up going to Kodiak on a project. I'm a small-time contractor. And I didn't climb. I went back in 88. I did meet a very cool guy in Kodiak. His name was Brian Young. Very tough, amazing, 1 in a million type of person. Amazing person. Crab fisherman, halibut, you know the drill. Black cod, etc. Cool guy, beautiful wife. Back then, she's still beautiful, but back then they were young, beautiful families just starting. We became friends. 88, I went back up on the mountain. Sure enough, I run into this guy with this big beard, Vern Tejas, and we became more acquainted. A couple years later, fast forward, we ended up guiding expeditions together on Mount McKinley, Denali. So it was a good time. I took, in 88, I took a guitar on my back to the top. not this one. And it was a long extension cord. Not funny. And I had no plan. I mean, I remember being there at 14,000 feet and not even thinking that I would take it to the summit, but I did. And how that came about, my mother played a role in that. She had a music store in Wasilla. I was literally driving to Talkeetna to get on the plane to do the 21-day whatever expedition. I stopped by my mother's music store and to say goodbye, and there was a guitar. My mother was standing right here behind the counter at Rainey's Music in Wasilla, and behind the counter in a big garbage can was a broken Ibanez guitar. And I just said, hey, can I have it? She said, well, it's broken. I said, yeah, give me a set of strings. So that's how it happened. You know, I would never be that cool to take a guitar, but under those crazy, weird, who cares circumstances, that's how it all started. And anyway, obviously I made it to the top. Not obviously I made it to the top, but the guitar makes it to the top. We're playing on the summit. Those are a lot of stories like that. Start guiding with Vern, and he's playing a little fiddle that's homemade. He's all about weight. You know, he's like Brent. He knows everything. That guy knows everything about Arctic exploration and travel, like Dick. Well, Vern knows everything about that and climbing and weight and almost to the point of, what's that word? OC. Yeah. And so he made his own fretboard on a piece of wood and a thing, and it has no body, the violin or the fiddle that he's playing in the mountains. It's so he has to carry a 9-volt pig nose Marshall amplifier on his climbing belt, this little square thing right here. And I nicknamed his fiddle the Stratavernius. And you like that one?
Me?
Yeah.
He was just fiddling around all the time.
Good one, Mom. Pardon me?
It better be.
So we had some great adventures. I mean, as I think back on it, of course, my kids are growing up over those years in the 90s, and next thing you know, I find myself climbing Mount Denali with my son Miles Rainey, and then my daughter Melanie Rainey, Misty Rainey, and Matthew Rainey, off and on over the years. But as of the 90s, it actually started in the 80s, I found myself becoming that guy to do films with. Because they wanted Vern, but he was always booked in advance, so I was a nobody. And so in retrospect, I think of all these amazing jobs I've had that really I have to give credit to the mountain for. It all started there, but all by accident. As I look back on those years, I think about, I worked as a sound man, I worked as a cameraman, a second cameraman. That was for a major PBS film. I climbed McKinley 5 times without ever taking a camera because I didn't own a camera. I never was a photo guy. Let's just go like Dick. Let's have an adventure. That's all I cared about. It was a break from work. I tend to work a lot. And so it was just a break to get away from work and get to the mountains, and that was it. Here I am, a sound man, which I'm not. Here I am because, of necessity and need, and there's not, back in those days, there weren't a lot of people in film in the mountains. So I'm a sound man, I'm a second cameraman. These films get bigger and bigger. Next thing you know, I'm working IMAX in the park. I think my job title was Alaska Denali Guide. We shot some stuff in the Ruth and some climbing shots. I mean, it was just amazing. And again, in retrospect, how this happened all by accident. Next thing you know, I'm with Drew Barrymore. Did I ever tell you about that, Mom?
What?
Nothing.
I don't think so.
Well, anyway, so I throw that name dropper aspect into it to show you the craziness of it all. I did an episode of An Idiot Abroad. And I never had seen that show before. I'm not a TV guy. I think 20 years in business, I was in business, but for 20 years I had an unlisted phone number. So, again, thinking back to where I am today, which I will share with you, I just have to always give credit to the mountain. Our family has had an amazing adventurous lifestyle, and it's not exclusively doing a 21-day expedition on Denali, which certainly can't be minimized. But to stand on top stand on top of that mountain or any mountain up here with your wife or your kids is, little guys, whatever. It's amazing. It's euphoric, and it's life. It's a life memory, if you will. I do recall that being after a major storm, very serious, when my wife climbed it. It was very serious storm at 17,000, and we got caught on the ridge between 16 and 17.2-ish, and it's a very dangerous place. A lot of accidents take place in that area, but anyway, we survived it. That was 2010. In the last 7 years, I climbed Denali 4 years in a row. And then I did the last 3 years-ish traveling with National Geographic on a TV show called Ultimate Survival Alaska. Again, I don't know to this day. People always ask me, how'd you get on that show? I don't know. National Geographic knocked on my door. I wrote a song about it. I heard a knock at my door. Hey, I'm not telepathic. So I asked, who is it? And a voice said, National Geographic. This is a fact. This is exactly what happened. So I invited them in, and they invited me out to Adventure Alaska. But I wondered about, where would we go? What would we do? Would we survive? And now, I'm the most traveled Alaskan alive. Well, I've seen Alaska's land, man, I've seen Denali span, man, I've tramped the Tongasstan, man, I've been chased by a grizzly bear, man, since Nat Geo put me on that show, I've seen Alaska's land, I've been to Grandview, Igloo, Glen Allen, Ketchikan, Moose Pass, Skagway, Bay, Kodiak, Fognak, Kakata, Kaltad, Kenai, Klukwan, Q, Uaniak, Chandler, Shenelaw, Shelikoff, Unimac, Chichichin, Chatwood, and Cottonwood, Kivalina. This goes on and on and on. Don't applaud. But I found myself on an amazing show, not being a fan of reality TV, but I found myself, luckily, I don't like the word luck, but again, I found out after the fact, they saw something about me and a guitar on McKinley and some YouTube thing, and they knocked on my door. Again, those adventures with no camera in my pack, leading to this amazing TV life. How much time we got left? None. So 5 minutes. We're almost done. So as we speak, I've just signed with a major network. It's all secret, but I told them I was fortunate to get on a show that was really, it was risky, it was dangerous, I loved it, I went all over Alaska, it's never going to happen again. There's no show that's ever going to be I shouldn't say no show, it'd be difficult to find a show that was as high risk as that one was, trust me. And I said, I want to make a show that Alaskans will watch, or don't hire me. So I actually have won the respect, we've won the respect of a major network, and they land here on Tuesday, and we sign the deal. Me and my kids. Thank you. Thanks, Mom.
Yeah, I don't want to give it away, but I just can't believe QVC's flying all the way up here. It's incredible. They're going to sell guitars on there, I guess. Thanks so much for coming to our biggest Dark Winter Nights live event yet. The goal of Dark Winter Nights is to share true stories from Alaska with the rest of the world, and your support is helping us to do that. Please remember that we need your stories. Fill out the form on the back of your program. Visit the Storyteller table. Go to our website, darkwinternights.com. Download our podcast. Like us on Facebook and Twitter. Tell your friends about us. The thing that I'm most proud about here with Dark Winter Nights is the team of professionals and organizations we've been able to convince to help us make tonight happen. I'd like to thank them now. And to make this part more interesting, I put the credits to rhyme. Now, keep in mind, I did this at 5:30 a.m. on Wednesday when I couldn't sleep, so just tuck that away back there. You've heard of poetic license. I'm hoping for poetic immunity here on this one. So here we go. First of all, I'd like to thank for help we could take to the bank the UAF College of Liberal Arts Journalism Department who gave us our start. There's Geek City Electronics. Your support sure gives us kicks. Forethought Carpentry, LLC. They do great work, I'm sure you'll see. And Pike's Waterfront Lodge is really swell. It's where our Anchorage storytellers dwell. Our executive producers down to a one are Naomi Horn, Colleen Wood, Ryan Peterson, John and Amanda Huff, and event coordinator Elena Suduth. Sound by Matt Hutter, lights by Ted Hooker. Frank's Menswear has made me quite the looker. KUAC can really jive. They air us in prime time, and now we're live. Our band tonight was Thought Trade, musicians of the highest grade. Travis Burrows is on the drums. Danny Opgennorth and Patrick Mayu are the ones who strum. And one who cannot be outdone is the lovely and talented Emily Anderson. Hey, just all alone over there, Travis. Take it all, man. It's all the glory for you. He's the only one left. Here tonight is my mother, one like you, there is no other. And to my dad who's passed away, you're on my mind every day. To my daughter whom I adore, after tonight I'll be home much more. And then I'd like to thank my wife, who is the true love of my life. Although we sometimes have our fights, we'll make it through Dark Winter Nights. And finally, our storytellers are, one and all above the bar, Chris Zwolinksi, Andy Connor, Dr. D, Brent Sass, Kat Betters, Sophie Henry, Aporn Stein, Heather Penn, Dick Griffith, Marty Rainey, and Harper O'Brien. Why don't you guys come up on stage? Before we go tonight, would you please join us in singing the Alaska Flag song led by Emily Anderson? I love this song. I think it's a great way to end a night of celebrating Alaska. The words are on the back of your programs.
8 stars of gold on a field of blue. Alaska's flag, make it mean to you. The blue of the sea, the evening sky, the mountain lakes, and the
These are the stories we tell up here in Alaska on dark winter nights. Good night.